Dharma Buns, Chapter 5. This was in keeping with Jafe's theories about women and lovemaking. I forgot to mention that the day the rock artist had called on him in the late afternoon, a girl had come right after, a blonde in rubber boots and Tibetan coat with wooden buttons, and in the general talk she'd inquired about our plan to climb Mount Matterhorn and said, "Can I come with you?" as she was a bit of a mountain climber herself. "Sure," said Jafe, in his funny voice he used for joking, a big, loud, deep imitation of a lumberjack he knew in the Northwest, a ranger actually, old Bernie Byers. "Sure, come on with us and we'll all screw you at 10,000 feet. And the way he said it was so funny and casual, and in fact serious, that the girl wasn't shocked at all, but somewhat pleased. In this same spirit, he'd now brought this girl, Princess, to our cottage. It was about 8 o'clock at night, dark. Alva and I were quietly sipping tea and reading poems, or typing poems at the typewriter, and 2 bicycles came in the yard. Jafe on his, Princess on hers. Princess had gray eyes and yellow hair and was very beautiful and only 20. I must say one thing about her. She was sex mad and man mad, so there wasn't much of a problem in persuading her to play Yabyum. Don't you know about Yabyum, Smith?" said Jafe in his big booming voice, striding in his boots, holding Princess's hand. "Princess and I come here to show you, boy." "Suits me," said I. "Whatever it is." Also, I'd known Princess before and had been mad about her in the city, but about a year ago. It was just another wild coincidence that she had happened to meet Jafe and fall in love with him, and madly too. She'd do anything he said. Whenever people dropped in to visit us at the cottage, I'd always put my red bandana over the little wall lamp and put the ceiling light to make a nice, cool, red, dim scene to sit and drink wine and talk in. I did this. I went to get the bottle of the kitchen, and I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw Jafe and Alva taking their clothes off and throwing them every which way, and I looked at Princess, was stark naked, her skin white as snow, when the red sun hits it at dusk in the dim red light. "What the hell?" I said. "Here's what Yabyum is, Smith," said Jafe. And he sat cross-legged on the pillow on the floor and motioned to Princess, who came over and sat down on him, facing him with her arms about his neck, and they sat like that, saying nothing for a while. Jafe wasn't nervous at all, and embarrassed, and just sat there in perfect form, just as he was supposed to do. This is what they do in the temples of Tibet. It's a holy ceremony. It's just like this in front of the chanting priests. People pray and recite Om Mani Padme Hum, which means Amen, the thunderbolt and the dark void. I'm the thunderbolt, and Princess is the dark void, you see. "But what's she thinking?" I yelled, almost in despair. I'd had such idealistic longings for that girl in that past year, and had conscience-stricken hours wondering if I should seduce her because she was so young and all. "Oh, this is lovely," said Princess. "Come on and try it." "But I can't sit cross-legged like that." Jafe was sitting in the full lotus position, it's called, with both ankles over both thighs. Alva was sitting in the mattress, trying to yank his ankles over his thighs to do it. Finally, Jafe's legs began to hurt, and they just tumbled over on the mattress, where both Alva and Jafe began to explore the territory. I still couldn't believe it. "Take your clothes off and join in, Smith." But on top of all that, the feelings about Princess, I'd also gone through an entire year of celibacy based on my feeling that lust was the direct cause of birth, which was the direct cause of suffering and death, and I had really no lie come to a point where I regarded lust as offensive and even cruel. "Pretty girls make graves," was my saying whenever I had to turn my head around involuntarily to stare in the incomparable pretties of Indian Mexico. And the absence of active lust in me had also given me a new peaceful life that I was enjoying a great deal. But this was too much. I was still afraid to take my clothes off. Also, I never liked to do that in front of more than one person, especially with men around. But Jafe didn't give a goddamn hoot and holler about any of this, and pretty soon he was making Princess happy, and then Alva had a turn, with his big serious eyes staring in the dim light, and him reading poems a minute ago. So I said, "How about me starting to work on her arm?" "Go ahead, great. which I did, lying down on the floor with all my clothes on and kissing her hand, then her wrist, then up to her body, as she laughed and almost cried with delight, everybody everywhere working on her. All the peaceful celibacy of my Buddhism was going down the drain. Smith, I distrust any kind of Buddhism or any kind of philosophy or social system that puts down sex, said JP quite scholarly, now that he was done and sitting naked, cross-legged, rolling himself a Bull Durham cigarette, which he did as part of his simplicity life. It ended up with everybody naked and finally making gay pots of coffee in the kitchen, and Princess on the kitchen floor naked with her knees clasped in her arms, lying on her side, just for nothing, just to do it. Then finally she and I took a warm bath together in the bathtub and could hear Alva and Jacob discussing Zen-free love lunacy orgies in the other room. Hey Princess, we'll do this every Thursday night, eh? Yelled Jaffe. It'll be a regular function. Yeah, yelled Princess from the bathtub. I'm telling you, she was actually glad to do all this and told me, you know, I feel like I'm the mother of all things, and I have to take care of my little children. You're such a young, pretty thing yourself. But I'm the old mother of Earth. I'm a bodhisattva. She was just a little off her nut, but when I heard her say bodhisattva, I realized she wanted to be a big Buddhist like Jaffe, and being a girl, the only way she could express it was this way, which had its traditional roots in the Yabyeom ceremony in Tibetan Buddhism, so everything was fine. Alva was immensely pleased and was all for the idea of every Thursday night, and so was I by now. Alva, Princess says she's a bodhisattva. Of course she is. She says she's the mother of all of us. The bodhisattva women of Tibet and parts of ancient India, said Jaffe, were taken and used as holy concubines in temples and sometimes in ritual caves, and would get to lay up a stock of merit, and they meditated too. All of them, men and women, they'd meditate, fast, have balls like this, go back to eating, drinking, talking, hike around, live in viharas in the rainy season and outdoors in the dry. There was no question of what to do about sex, which is what I always liked about Oriental religion, and what I always dug about the Indians in our country. You know, when I was a little kid in Oregon, I didn't feel that I was an American at all. With all that suburban ideal and sex repression and general jury newspaper gray censorship of all our real human values. But when I discovered Buddhism, and all I suddenly felt that I had lived in the previous lifetime innumerable ages ago, and now because of faults and sins in that lifetime, I was being degraded to a more grievous domain of existence, and my karma was to be born in America where nobody has any fun or believes in anything, especially freedom. That's why I was always sympathetic to freedom movements too, like anarchism in the Northwest, the old-time heroes of Everett Massacre and all. It ended up with long, earnest discussion about all these subjects, and finally Princess got dressed and went home with Jaffe on their bicycles, and Alva and I sat facing each other in the dim red light. But you know, Ray, Jaffe is really sharp. He's really the wildest, craziest, sharpest cat we've ever met. And what I love about him is he's the big hero of the West Coast. Do you realize I've been out here for 2 years now and hadn't met anybody worth knowing really, or anybody with any truly illuminated intelligence, and was giving up hope for the West Coast? Besides, all the background he has in Oriental scholarship, Pound, taking peyote and seeing visions, his mountain climbing and Bikuing. Wow, J.P. Ryder is a great new hero of American culture. He's mad, I agree. Oh wait, different times. Oh, he's mad, I agreed. And other things I like about him, his quiet, sad moments when he don't say much. Gee, I wonder what will happen to him in the end. I think he'll end up like Han Shang, living alone in the mountains and writing poems on the walls of cliffs, or chanting them to crowds outside his cave. Or maybe he'll go to Hollywood and be a movie star. You know, he said that the other day. He said, Alva, you know I've never thought of going to the movies and becoming a star. I can do anything, you know. I haven't tried that yet. And I believe him. He can do anything. Did you see the way he had princes all wrapped around him? Aye, indeed. And later that night, as Zelda slept, I sat under the tree in the yard and looked up at the stars or closed my eyes to meditate and try to quiet myself down back to my normal self. Alva couldn't sleep and came out and lay flat on his back in the grass looking up at the sky and said big steamy clouds going by in the dark up there. It makes me realize we live on an actual planet. Close your eyes and you'll see more than that. Oh, I don't know what you mean by all that, he said pettishly. He was always being bugged by my little lectures on samadhi ecstasy, which is a state you reach when you stop everything and stop your mind, and you actually, with your eyes closed, see a kind of eternal multi-swarm of electrical power of some kind ululating in place of just pitiful images and forms of objects, which are, after all, imaginary. And if you don't believe me, come back in a billion years and deny it. For what is time? Don't you think it's much more interesting just to be like JP and have girls and studies and good times and really be doing something than all this silly sitting under trees? Nope, I said, and I meant it. And I knew JP would agree with me. All JP's doing is amusing himself in the void. I don't think so. I bet he is. I'm going mountain climbing with him next week and find out and tell you. Well, as for me, I'm just gonna go on being Alva Goldberg, and to hell with all this Buddhist bullshit. You'll be sorry someday. Why don't you ever understand what I'm trying to tell you? It's with your sixth senses that you're fooled into believing not only that you have six senses, but that you contact an actual outside world with them. If it wasn't for your eyes, you wouldn't see me. If it wasn't for your ears, you wouldn't hear that airplane. If it wasn't for your nose, you wouldn't smell the midnight mint. If it wasn't for your tongue, taster, you wouldn't taste the difference between A and B. If it wasn't for your body, you wouldn't feel princess. There is no me, no mind, no airplane, no princess, no nothing. You, for Christ's sakes, do you want to go on being fooled every damn minute of your life? Yes, that's all I want. I thank God that something has come out of nothing. Well, I got news for you. It's the other way around. Nothing has come out of something. And that something is Dharmakaya, the body of the true meaning. And that nothing is this, and all this twaddle and talk. I'm going to bed. Well, sometimes I see a flash of illumination in what you're trying to say, but believe me, I get more of a satori out of princess than out of words. It's a satori of your foolish flesh, you lecher. I know my Redeemer liveth. What Redeemer? And what liveth? Oh, let's cut this out and just live. Balls. When I thought like you, Alva, I was just as miserable and graspy as you are now. All you want to do is run out there and get laid and get beat up and get screwed up and get old and sick and banged around by samsara. You fucking eternal meat of comeback. You'll deserve it too, I'll say. So my phone stopped recording because I ran out of space. Deleted some stuff. Continuing. There's only like half a page left. Okay. So they're arguing. And he says, that's not nice. Everybody's cheerful and trying to live with what they got. Your Buddhism has made you mean, Ray, and makes you even afraid to take your clothes off for a simple, healthy orgy. Well, I did finally, didn't I? But you were coming on so hinky about it. Oh, let's forget it. Alva went to bed and I sat and closed my eyes and thought, this thinking has stopped. But because I had to think it, no thinking had stopped. But there did come over me a wave of gladness to know that all this perturbation was just a dream, already ended, and I didn't have to worry because I wasn't I. And I prayed that God, or Tathagata, would give me enough time and enough sense and strength to be able to tell people what I knew, as I can't even do properly now. So they'd know what I know and not despair so much. The old tree brooded over me silently, a living thing. I heard a mouse snoring in the garden weeds. The rooftops of Berkeley looked like pitiful living meat sheltering grieving phantoms from the eternality of the heavens, which they feared to face. By the time I went to bed, I wasn't taken in by no princess, or no desire for no princess, and nobody's disapproval, and I felt glad and slept well.